Thanks so much, Mark. Republicans and Democrats appear to be circling their wagons over impeachment, with polling showing increasing acceptance, but President Trump's approval rating not taking that big a hit, at least yet. We turn now to our political panel. In Philadelphia, Reverend Joe Watkins, he's senior consultant with Causeway Strategies and former aide to President George Herbert Walker Bush. And here in New York, Christina Greer, Fordham University Associate Professor of Political Science. She is the author of Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. So welcome, Christina. Welcome, Joe. Good to have you here. Christina, I'll start with you, basically. As a practical matter, impeachment is a political act, fundamentally. As long as the country, or at least the base, stays with President Trump, is there really a realistic prospect that he'd be convicted?
Well, he probably won't be convicted because we know that the Senate is controlled by Republicans. But if we read the intent of the framers in the Federalist Papers, impeachment is a very important process so that the American public has a way to express dissatisfaction with possibly the behavior of the executive, meaning the President of the United States. And then in this instance, it appears that Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House, who is a Democrat, believes that she has the number of votes for Democrats to vote to impeach this particular president because of various crimes that Democrats feel he has committed over the course of the past few years.
So, Joe, what about it? If this is basically a constitutional way of expressing displeasure, whether or not he's convicted, is there an argument for it? Because there aren't Republicans really jumping to his defense vociferously. We have some people like Lindsey Graham, for example, who are really raising questions.
Well, yeah, you're going to have a number of Senate Republicans who are going to support the president, and that really is the place to watch. For the most part, if you see Senate Republicans standing strongly with the president, then that gives you a clear indication that conviction won't ever happen. Even if the House votes to impeach him, the Senate will be the president's firewall, and they'll not allow for a conviction to go forward. So I think that the smart thing to do is to watch the Senate. There'll be some that come forward, like Mitt Romney, that may voice their displeasure, although they're being careful about the words they choose. But for the most part, the lion's share of Republicans in the Senate and even in the House are going to either be silent or stand with the president.
So, Christina, I wonder if there's a price to be paid, though, by the Democrats as we go into a presidential election year. We've not had the investigation of a president during a presidential election year before. And does this distract the viewers, distract the media to some extent, away from some of the fundamental underlying issues that maybe Democrats would like to fight this on?
Right, but I think what Democrats are saying is the key issue is this actually isn't a political conversation. This is about the future of our democracy. As it states in the Constitution, and the Founding Fathers made it very clear, we can never have a foreign entity interfere in our politics or our political process. So there are many Democrats who think, okay, we might take a hit, but for the sake of the nation, for the good of the nation, this has to be done, and it has to be done quickly. And to Joe's point, you know, this isn't actually about a penalty for the Democrats. Republicans need to think about their penalty. They've got quite a few senators who are up for re-election. Mitt Romney is very safe. He's, 4+ years away from re-election. But there's several Republican senators who are going to have to go on record as supporting this president as he, sort of has alliances and relationships with Russia, North Korea, China, and Saudi Arabia.
So this is a really interesting point, Joe, that Christina is making. To what extent does maybe some more vulnerable Republican senators and Democrats, because as I understand the structure the Senate is more disadvantageous to the Republicans than the last time. Is there some vulnerability there that they're going to have to go out and sort of really buy into what President Trump has done when a lot of people don't find it that savory?
I think they'll take a wait-and-see approach to all this. Remember, the president did campaign pretty vigorously for a number of Republicans who won their Senate seats, and those will be some of the loudest supporters of this president. Some, like Susan Collins, will have to choose their words very carefully because they'll be in hotly contested races in states that are maybe neither red nor blue at this point, or maybe red and turning blue, and so they'll have to be careful about what they say. But at the end of the day, I think that the Republican senators, especially in those key states where there may be some vulnerability, are going to choose their words very carefully and adopt a wait-and-see approach.
We're talking with our political panel here of Joe Watkins down in Philadelphia and Christina Greer right here in New York. So, Christina, let's talk about the horse race. We have to get to the horse race sooner or later. Is this going to hurt Vice President Biden as a practical matter? Because his name is all over that transcript.
Right. And so, you know, we're still pretty early in the political process. We're going to have to wait and see how this affects him in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. We know that Elizabeth Warren is surging. We know that Bernie Sanders has had some unfortunate medical issues and has had to take a break. So we'll see how that helps with his grassroots, not just fundraising, but also campaigning. But also we have a debate coming up next week where there's still some sort of secondary and tertiary candidates that are hanging on. Some have already made it to the November debates. So we are far from decided as a Democratic Party as to who the nominee will be. Obviously, Joe Biden has fundraising advantages. He has name recognition advantages. He's, you know, this is his third time running for the presidency, but this is not his race that's tied up in a bow.
Joe, you've been in the White House during difficult times. To what extent does this get in the way of the nation's business? And let's talk about one specific piece of business right now, which is China. Our dealings with China. We have trade negotiations with China. We have the problems with Hong Kong. We had a remarkable incident just over the weekend where the head of the basketball team, the general manager, came out, said something that he had to retract, and in fact people jumped on that, Republicans and Democrats, condemning him for apologizing to Beijing. How complicated does this become for the White House?
Well, not terribly complicated for the White House. I mean, for certainly those Republican senators and congressmen and Democrats as well who have jumped all over the Houston Rockets about their response and the NBA about its response, they're free to do that. And this is there's really no hit that they take. The NBA has to be careful because the hit that they take is a financial one because they do significant business in China. They've got a number of fans in China as well as in the United States, of course, and they've got to be concerned about shareholder value with regard to their brand and their teams. So they take a significant hit if they don't come to some kind of an agreement or at least fix this temporary problem with China, given the remarks that the Houston Rockets GM made. But that being said, Republican senators and congressmen take no hit at all. They can come out and say that what they feel is the truth, what they think ought to be our position with regards to China. And I don't think the White House will necessarily weigh in on this one.
Christina, Joe makes a really powerful point about the NBA and its business and how dependent it is on international links. We spoke recently with the Deputy Commissioner of the NBA, Mark Tatum, and this is what he had to say specifically about their efforts overseas.
The game is a global game. Today, 25% of the players in the NBA were born outside the United States. When you look at our ownership group, Vivek Ranadive was born in Mumbai, India. Mikhail Prokhorov was obviously born in Russia and is Russian. And Joe Tsai just purchased 49% of the Brooklyn Nets, and he's you know, Chinese and from China. So the international ownership piece continues to be a part of the NBA, and I think so much of that is driven by the popularity of our sport.
Point out that Joe Tsai since then actually became the full owner of the Brooklyn Nets with the unanimous approval of the NBA Board of Governors. So, Caroline, how does this play out for? Because as a practical matter, it's not just Donald Trump who has some problems with the Chinese.
Right, but I think this is, I agree with what Joe has said, but here's where it's different. You know, we know that LeBron James and the Lakers will be overseas playing ball next week. Now, if LeBron James decides to speak out in support of Hong Kong, and we know that he's been very sort of socially active in these past few years, this is where we actually probably will see the president dip his toe into this water, because anytime there's been a black athlete that's spoken out about social justice or racial justice, we've seen the president actually intervene. And so this will be a little confusing for Republicans who follow him, because now we'll see the president actually siding with China, even though we're in a tariff war / beef, we're not exactly sure. So the bottom line of the story is the president is unpredictable, but we do know that if African-American athletes speak out in favor of Hong Kong, we do know that we can expect a response from the president of the United States.
But I'll bet you Roger Goodell's happy that it's Adam Silver's turn this time.
Finally,
it's
right?
It's not football, it's basketball. Okay, many thanks to our political panel. Joe Watkins of Causeway.